start recording the class. Today we're going to start and go deeper into the command economic system, guys. Because of that, let me see how many PowerPoints. I wanna discuss half of the 21. So I have discussed like 10. Okay, let's begin, and then after these explanations, I'm going to play a couple of videos that really go also deeper into these political system that are the ones who take care of this economic system. Yeah, so Polanco is here. Polanco. Okay, let's begin then. The command system. Remember the command economic system is the one that the government establishment is the one who answers the three questions in the economy. The three questions. So they are the one who decide what to produce, how to produce, and to whom to produce. Okay, okay. So they are the ones, they are the only ones, not like the traditional and the other one like the market system, okay? Now the objectives are over here. I'm not going to go, we're not gonna read it. So it's over here. And these are the vocabulary. Remember, this is vocabulary number 3 and the title is Command Economies. You need to write in your notebook, and under the title, you need to start writing the vocabulary and find and try look for the meanings of these four meanings for these 4 words. Okay, now let's begin. Government control, definitely, that's what I said. The government is the one who is in control of everything. In command economies, leaders decide what should be considered and how it should be produced. They are the one who decide everything and the way they're supposed to be produced. They also decide for whom, but again, it should be produced in part by setting wage, okay? By determining who earns the highest wage. También dice quién es el que gana más y quién es el que gana menos. Highest wage and who the lowest. These leaders decide who has the money to buy available products. So it's not that democracy. That's not social democracy, okay? A system in which the society's leaders, usually members of the central government, make all economic decisions is called centrally planned economy. Centrally planned economy. That's another way of saying command economy. Okay, example says government planning. What if the government went further? ¿Qué tal si el gobierno yese más allá? Definitivamente, hay que poner ejemplo como los Estados Unidos. Suppose that the bureaucrats in government official in Washington, D.C. had the power to decide which business could operate in your city. So te dice, si tú puedes abrir tu negocio sí o no. Imagínense, dice, imaginémonos, suppose. Now further, un poquito más allá, extendiéndonos en las decisiones que yo tomo. These bureaucrats decide not only what this business should produce, but also how much each business should produce each month. Okay? O sea que tú no puedes producir más de lo que te pone un límite el Estado. Eso es un ejemplo. Yeah, the government planning. Finally, finally, they also decide who could have jobs and set work hours. ¿Quién puede trabajar y por qué horas? And pay scale for workers. Y una lista de una escala salarial para los trabajadores. The government controls of this type are feature of command or central plan. Así se le llama. Command economy or central plan economy. Estos son sinónimos. ¿Ya? Let's move on. Okay, now over here they compare the free market economy and a command economy. Who's the owner of it? Who's the ownership? Firms and the market, the firms owned by private sector. Now over here in command economy, in the industry, Cedeño. Okay, industry owned or market managed, the government. The government is the one who manage everything. Incentive, okay, of course, that's over here, there are incentives, and the government, there are little incentive. The price, they control the price. Over here is the supply and demand, demanda y oferta. So the market is the one who decide what is going to be the price. Efficiency, definitely, government is not that efficient, it's less efficient. And so on. Over here, there are, over here, this one. Examples, Hong Kong, Singapore have limited government intervention, limited. Now, Soviet Union, China, and Cuba, over here, definitely, the command is the one, or the plan system. The planning system is the one who decides what to do. The province, my God, also phone, still arriving people. The province, inequality market failures and monopoly. That's the problems over here in the free market. Now over here, the problems in the command. My God. Let me see. Inefficiency, bureaucracy, shortage, surplus, less choice and less freedom. Definitely, those are the problems when we compare these two type of economic system. Let's continue, guys. Now, example socialism and communism. Now, in the video that I'm going to play, I'm gonna tell you what's the difference between. And over here is trying to tell you what's the difference between socialism and communism. The main difference is one of those is stronger or is more strict than the other one. That's the difference. I think the more strict is the communism and the socialism. In the socialism system, you may have some owners or some private owners for any kind of business. And the communism, there's no private business. That's mainly basically the difference between these, but both comes from the same ideology, and who's the father of this ideology is Mr. Karl Marx. Karl Marx is the father of this movement, sociology system, okay? Now let's talk about him. Examples, socialism and communism. Karl Marx. En el siglo XIX, this 19th century Germany philosopher, historian, and economist. According to Marx analysis, all history is struggle between classes. Definitely hay una pelea de clases entre la clase alta y la clase baja. La clase alta siempre quiere explotar a la clase baja, definitivamente, según él, y así es. Esa es la realidad. In his own time, the struggle was between the owner of the great industrial factories and the workers. Acuérdense que en esa época estaba la revolución industrial. Ya ellos querían, los dueños de negocio querían que se produciese y no importara la hora de trabajo. Ellos, la jornada de trabajo, chicos, en aquella época no era de 8 horas, eran de 15, 16 horas, chicos. Desde las 6 hasta las 9 de la noche, y ahí explotaban al trabajador. Entonces, en aquel entonces hubo un movimiento y se logró hacer, los sindicatos lograron hacer, a reducir todo esto y a tratar de mejorar el salario, ¿ok? Okay, pero el que inició todo esto fue este señor Karl Marx, ¿ok? Where was I between the owners and the grades, and the workers exchanged their labor for wages. While the industrials grew rich, the workers remained relatively poor. O sea, ellos se hacen más ricos y ellos no había ganancia, igualito. Marx predicted that in time the workers would overthrow, o sea, que iban a tumbar this system and transfer owners to factories to public hands. Todos estos, los dueños debían pasar la factoría al público. Es el comunismo. With the means of production owned by the government, the class struggle would be resolved and all citizens would share in the same wealth. Okay, now over here, the same thing, the same chart that try to define the difference between these three systems that we discussed. Okay, Who's the owner over here? In the communism, the government definitely is the only owner in the government. Now, socialistic government owns only basic resources and the rest are privately. That's the difference between this and this one, okay? How are resources allocated? Ubicados, están ubicados, asignados, mejor dicho. The government planner decides how resources are used, while in socialism, the government planner allocate basic resources, market force to allocate, and privately owned resources. Okay. What role does the government play? ¿Cuál es el rol del gobierno? The government makes all economic decisions. Over here in this one, in socialism, the government makes decisions in the basic industry only. Now the rest is for the private sector. Okay, that's basically the difference between the communism and socialism. Let me stop right here. I have to talk on to this one, to the next one. Okay, yeah, exactly. Now, socialism and communism, guys. Socialism, an economic system in which the government owns some, this is the word, some or all of the factor of production developed from the ideas of Marx. Okay, todo viene de la idea. The father of communism is Mr. Marx, a German philosopher, and so on, so on, so on. Now, communism, on the other hand, communism, a more extreme, más extremo, extreme form of socialism. That's the difference between socialism and communism. This is more stronger, extreme form of socialism in which there is no private owner of properties and little or political freedom. Also grew out of Marx thinking. Todo nace de donde? Del pensamiento de Karl Marx. Essentially, it is authoritarian socialism. Es un socialismo autoritario. An authoritarian system requires absolute obedience to authority. Figure 2.1 lists the major characteristics of socialism and communism. I don't know if it's previous, I think it was the previous one, this one. 2.5, okay. Yeah, this is comparing economic systems. Okay. List the major characters of socialism and communism. Now, democratic, now there's another, it's like communism, no, the socialism, they try to, there are different kind of socialism. Now, this is another kind of socialism. That's a democratic socialism. It's an established through the democratic political process rather than the strong or violent overthrow of the government. In this form of socialism, the government owns the basic industry, but other industries are privately owned. So, okay, let's stop right here because if I continue talking, then you won't have time to watch the video that talks and go into deeper about the difference between the socialism and communism that I brought for you guys. Now I'm gonna, let's prepare, here. I'm gonna play the video that talks about the first one. Let's begin with the socialism book. That's the first one, and then the communism, okay?
All the time in the news, but what really is it? Today on the Mr. Sin channel, we'll be talking about socialism and socialism is an economic system that focuses on wealth distribution. It does have some aspects of a market economy, and it also has some of a command economy. If you don't know what I'm talking about there, click on the cards above. They'll show you those videos where I go into a market and a command economy. But socialism, the goal of it is to have wealth distribution. There'll be still some rich and there'll be some poor, but their goal is to have more people in the middle. Now, to do this, the government plays a role in the economy. This is different than capitalism, especially true capitalism. The government is involved here. And normally how the government distributes wealth is through taxes and then the redistribution of those taxes. And this could take shape in a variety of ways. Maybe in an income tax, it could be also a sales tax, it could be property taxes. All these different taxes would be used to be able to create then a distribution where money can be spread out throughout the people. A lot of times what occurs is the wealthier get taxed at a higher rate, while the people who have less get taxed at a lower rate. Now, this is one of the controversial things with socialism. Some people say that you shouldn't just tax the wealthy because they have done well in society. Others, though, point out that, well, maybe the wealthy have benefited more from society and they should give back to society. And then again, there's a counter argument saying, well, they could donate to charity and let them make their own decisions. And you shouldn't just punish people. And we could go back and forth on these things all day. And in class, I am sure we will be debating this. But socialism, the big focus of it is wealth distribution. If you remember anything from socialism, remember it's all about bridging the gap. You still will have some people who are wealthy and some people who are poor, but the goal is to have more people in the middle. Now, this can be a big advantage for a lot of people as there are safety nets and people will have protection. If you fail, the government's there to help you get back on your feet. On the other hand, though, too, the disadvantage, like we've already brought up, is that it could stifle innovation and creativity. The reason being that the government will step in when you become more successful and maybe take away more of your money. So hopefully you understand exactly what socialism is, how it impacts people in a society, and how it's even different than capitalism, the one that I've already referenced. Make sure to check out my other video.
And now let's watch the other one about the communism, a very strong way of socialism.
Welcome to the Mr. Sin channel. Today we're going to be talking about communism. We'll see what communism is, why some people like it, and why some people don't. So let's figure out what's going on in the world of communism. Communism's goal is to create a classless society. Now, communism's been practiced throughout history and even today in a variety of ways, but true communism tries to get as close as possible to a classless society. If you're going to remember anything about communism, remember classless society. When Karl Marx created communism, he had this idea.
It says classless society. It means that there's no class. Everybody is the same. While in the socialism, there are some private sector and they try to focus on the middle class. There are gonna be some poor people, but anyway, most of the people in the society is gonna have a job. Okay.
Of capitalism being evil. He thought that capitalism would just drive revolution in society, that eventually people would get so upset with all of the losers and the few winners, and it would rise up and eventually take over the government and the businesses and the bourgeoisie. Now, Karl Marx thought this would lead to socialism, where we would see the bridged gap between the different classes, and then eventually another kind of revolution, and we would get to communism. Marx believed that for communism to work, we had to have a big government, at least at the start. The government would come in and collect all the resources, the means of production, and then distribute them evenly. Over time, then, the government's role would continuously shrink. As people became equal, there would no longer be this constant fighting over scarce resources. And when everyone had the same amount, there would be no more an incentive to continuously outdo people. And so then by having everyone be the same, we would have order, and the government would no longer be needed. And so in true communism, the government then would continue to shrink until eventually they go away. Because if the government stays, that is a class in its own, and then people in the government would be above others, and that would defeat the purpose of a classless society. Communism's great on paper. It sounds really good. Unfortunately, we haven't seen a lot of examples, at least on the large scale, throughout history of communism working. Normally what starts to happen is communism will be put in place, and then a dictator or a big government will take over, and they don't relinquish their power. That's kind of the human error. So the same with communism is great on paper, but bad in practice, partially because of human error. Now, in smaller societies, we've seen communism work. Just again, though, on the large scale, it doesn't work that much. People give up too much individual freedoms, and corruption normally comes in. Hopefully you can understand exactly what communism is, how it's supposed to happen, and why it just doesn't necessarily work.
Okay, let's start right here, guys. It's 8:25. You need a haircut, Polanco.